This is Tony Abbatangelo, the Vegas Lawyers. We're having a wonderful podcast with the newly elected Judge Nadia Wood of Las Vegas Justice Court 16. So welcome and thank you for your time and being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's get a little background on what's going on in Justice Court 16. It's a new department, right?
Yes, it is a new department. It was on the ballot for the first time in 2022. Our population is getting bigger here in Vegas, and so as our population gets bigger, we have more cases going through the system, and so we need more judges to handle those cases so that everything's moving in a timely manner and people's cases aren't getting delayed.
And from my recall, there's a statute that says every, 200,000 people or 150,000, something like that, we get to create a new department.
Yes, that's right.
And that's how 16 came about.
That's right, yep.
And then you ran against a bunch of people, one person, you're by yourself. What happened?
No. So the seat was just on the ballot, and it was an open seat, so there was no incumbent. So 4 of us ran for the seat, and I was very fortunate in that I was able to get over 50% of the vote in the primary. So I did win my race in the primary.
That's pretty impressive. 4 people, and you got 50%. Or more than 50%.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
excellent. Well, good for you. That also saves us from making donations. Thank you again, Nadia. So with that being said, let's get a little bit of background about you and like where'd you grow up and where'd you go to law school, things like that.
Absolutely. So I was actually born in Mississippi.
Really?
Yeah, Gulfport, Mississippi.
Okay.
And then when I was about 5 or 6, my parents moved to California. So I grew up most of my life in Southern California.
We're at in Southern Cal.
A suburb of Los Angeles, like a little suburb north of Los Angeles.
Okay, I went to undergrad in law school in San Diego. Best weather in the country.
Yeah.
A lot of traffic in LA.
I know.
I've got a daughter up in Burbank right now going to singing school.
Okay. Yeah, so that's close to where I grew up. I grew up in Woodland Hills.
Nice. Okay,
yeah,
I'm
so
familiar
right around
with it.
Burbank, yeah.
So you grew up there, high school and all that stuff?
Yep.
How about college?
So I graduated high school, and then I went up to Northern California for college. I went to the University of California at Berkeley.
I don't know why she's on this program, people. She's way smarter than me. So Berkeley, really?
Yeah,
That's
yes.
once again impressive. And how about law school?
So then after I graduated law school, I went to the East Coast to Washington, D.C., and went to Georgetown Law.
Very good resume. So no, didn't want to stick back east with, law of the, government law and all that stuff they do?
I really loved Washington, D.C. It's an amazing city. I mean, it was such an amazing experience getting to learn law at our capital, right? It was incredible. And I absolutely loved it. But my family was all back on the West Coast, and so I wanted to get back closer to my parents and closer to my family.
Yeah, my family was out here and friends were in Vegas. So after I graduated law school in San Diego, I wanted, because the same thing. People are like, why didn't you stay there? It's a great place and all that. I'm like, family's here. Plus, my dad was a lawyer, had a job waiting for me. And if you saw my grades, only he would hire me. But anyway, that's another story for another podcast. All right, so you come back out. So you come back to California, or
no? So
you come straight to Vegas?
I came straight to Vegas. I again love Southern California. Blessed to have grown up there. Great experience. But as you said, the traffic is terrible. Cost of living is really high. I mean, it's not an easy place to just be starting out.
That's true.
Right? Or even for those who have been there a while, still not the easiest spot. But I knew I wanted to be a public defender. Going through law school, I actually interned at multiple public defender offices. I interned with the Los Angeles public defender one of my summers in law school. And so I knew I wanted to be a public defender. I knew I didn't necessarily want to be exactly in Los Angeles. So I was interviewing with public defender offices on the West Coast, kind of looking for the office that was going to be a right fit. And when I came out to Las Vegas, I absolutely fell in love. The public defender's office here is just incredible.
Who was in charge at that time? Was that Phil Cohn?
That was Phil Cohn.
Yeah, Phil really had a good training program and all that stuff too, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Phil, and that's, a problem that you are well aware of. Public defender's offices are not always great places for training. They don't always have that support system just because of lack of resources, unfortunately. But Phil always did a really good job and had a training program that was set up. He felt it was important that new attorneys get good training so that they were out there doing good work.
Right, and that's what I thought was always good about Phil, is that, the trial prep, and you'd get attached to, my understanding was you'd be attached like a senior or a veteran, and they kind of show you the ropes, and as well as throw you in the action, get your feet wet.
Yeah, so the public defender's office, and it's been that way I started in the office 11 years ago, and I think it was that way even before I started. They start you with a 6-week training program. So for the first 6 weeks, you're not even touching cases. They're just training you on what the state of the law is, on issues that come up frequently. They're training you on getting on your feet, speaking to a judge, how to basically do the nuts and bolts.
Right.
Then after you finish that 6-week training program, they give you a mentor and a team chief. So you've got 2 people supervising you and making sure they're going to court with you in the beginning, making sure that you know what you're doing, making sure you're comfortable, and kind of giving you both that confidence and that safety net to make sure that you're helping your clients and not accidentally doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I wish I would have had that. My dad was a lawyer, like I said. He gives me a stack of files, and away I go. The first case I ever had, this will show you the difference in how times in 1990 to 2011.
Yeah.
I get this case called, I don't even know what I'm doing, right? I'm like, John Smith, the guy got a bench warrant. I didn't even know to look in the file to see if he called. I was so nervous. And that's where it's great that you get thrown in with a 6-week training program. You get to have a mentor. And that way, if you stumble, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You got somebody to catch you. Because our main concern, especially, I presume, with you wanting to be in the PD's office, your concern is your client.
Yes.
As opposed to your reputation or what you did right or wrong.
Right.
You want to make sure the client's okay.
Yes. Want to make sure you're not, you're there to help a person. You want to make sure you don't actually accidentally do harm.
Yeah, and that's where I do get offended by people saying the public pretender, the dump truck. And that's where I've always felt with the public defender's office having to be, I guess, with that volume of clientele that just don't respect you because you're not paid. You know what I mean? You're not paid by them,
Right.
I should say.
Yes, yeah.
And I've told plenty of people, and I tell them all the time to clients, there are plenty of public defenders I'd like to represent me, plenty of private attorneys I would not, and vice versa. You just never know. You just got to get a good, strong attorney. Now, the nice thing about having you on the bench is I know your reputation because we used to see each other all the time. You're a fighter. You care about your clients. You know the law. So why don't we tell a little bit about the PD's office with your experience, because I know you had track experience and then you were a specialty team.
That's correct.
And also, for example, like I said, this is an open forum. Jury trials, how many have you done? Things like that. So kind of take it away.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. So, so I've been at the public defender's office 11 years. I started on track, which is general litigation. Basically, any type of case you can think of, other than cases that carry a mandatory minimum of life in prison.
So the murders, first-degree kidnappings, sex assaults, those are not on track.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. First-degree kidnappings sometimes are.
That's
sometimes, just because if they're not attached to anything else, but usually they're attached to something else. Very rarely do you just see them on track.
Right.
But so the idea being that when you start in the office, you're starting with cases where you're not accidentally going to get somebody a life sentence.
Whoops, sorry, dude.
And so it's general litigation, everything you can think of, right? Petty larcenies, grand larcenies, stealing a vehicle, possession of a stolen vehicle, things like that.
Even
all
robbery and
robbery,
all that
all
stuff.
of those types of things are that general litigation track case. And so I was there for about 4 years. After about 4 years in the office, I got moved to a specialty team. For the last seven years, I have done only life cases. So every single one of my clients is facing a mandatory minimum of life in prison.
But were you on like sex assault or guns, or how does it work in the PD's office?
So the PD's office does not have guns. That's
Okay.
so I know the district attorney's
They
office
do.
has guns. We don't. General litigation handles gun cases for us. So we have general litigation, like I talked about. We have a specialty team that's for juveniles.
Right.
That is for individuals who are under 18 who are charged with a crime.
But wait, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Certified as adults or just a juvenile PD?
Just the juvenile PDs.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
we have the juvenile team. We have an appellate team, which handles after cases go to trial. If somebody loses at trial, they have the right to an appeal. Our appellate team handles all of those appeals. So they're kind of our writing geniuses. I call them our law nerds.
That's our
right?
Sharon Dickinsons
Yes,
and Deborah Westbrooks.
yes. Very, very smart individuals. Bill Waters, we've got some great people over there who are just so smart and do such good work. And then we have our murder team, which handles homicides. And it specifically, this is interesting, I learned this while I was on track, it's only murders, so first and second degree murder. If you get a voluntary manslaughter or an involuntary manslaughter, that stays with track.
All right.
Because it's not a life sentence, it's a lower sentence. So they handle the first and second degree murder cases, and then we have our special victims or sexual assault unit that handles sexual assault cases.
So what were you doing?
I was on sexual assault.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And how many trials do you think you had?
I've done probably about 20 felony jury trials.
See, and I think that's great because in justice court, for the listeners, we don't hear jury trials in justice court except for now in domestic violence cases,
Right.
which are still misdemeanors.
Yes.
But once you get into jury trials, it's a whole different world of strategy. It's a whole different world of preparation. And I think that's a talent you bring to the bench. And that's what I think is going to be very helpful in justice court. Because even though it's still not jury trials,
Right.
you know where that train's going.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's important to have done jury trials to be on the bench because, I mean, before you were a judge, you did lots of jury trials. Same thing.
3 months into being a lawyer, my dad's like,
Yeah.
you're going to do this jury trial. It was an involuntary manslaughter. What was a manslaughter?
Yeah.
It was a fist fight.
Right. Oh,
You know, a guy died.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, was it a second degree? No, they charged him with voluntary manslaughter.
Okay.
And it was a fist fight. The classic, as you might know in your younger days, when, dude, I'm cool, let me go.
Yeah.
And they let the shorter, stocky guy go.
Right.
And he runs up and he punches the taller, skinnier guy. Everybody described it. His eyes rolled in the back of his head. He hit his head on the parking meter.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
his brain rattled
Oh,
and
my
died.
goodness.
So it's a very sad situation.
Yeah.
But that's what I tell my kids, and they're close to your age. That's how bad you make me feel. You know, they're 18 to 25. You don't want to get in fist fights.
Bless you. 18 to 25. I'll take that any day of the week. Not even close, but thank you. I'll take it.
Maybe everybody just looks young to me because I'm getting older by the day. But I'm like, you don't want to get in fights because weird things happen. I mean, forget these guys trained now with MMA and all.
Yes,
that. But, you know, I mean, like they said, this was just a fluke fight where a guy hits his head on the parking meter because he got knocked out.
Yeah. No, it's
So,
tragic.
that was 3 months into it.
And that's I think, right, the trial experience is so helpful because the reality is, you're right, we don't do a ton of trials in justice court, but knowing the evidentiary rules, knowing the state of the law, knowing the record, understanding that record-making process, I think is so important for making legal rulings.
And I just had a case in front of Judge Nadia where, and I'm off the case now, and it's all public record, so I can talk about it.
Okay.
Where my appointed client, who's doing the last 3 years of his habitual criminal sentence, tells me, man, why didn't you find the victim is still alive? My 14-year-old daughter can find him on the internet. And I said, well, you know, those autopsy photos identifying the guy as dead and the eyewitnesses, it's kind of a problem here. And the DA, and he wanted to testify to the exculpatory evidence. And Cicento let him do that, which I thought was smart, with the limitation. And I said, I don't want him to testify.
Right.
But he wants to testify. It's his Fifth Amendment right.
Sure, absolutely.
And by you going to trials and getting beat up and the clients listening to you, not listening to you, you have that experience.
Absolutely.
So he gets on the stand and the DA says, hey, I get to cross-examine him about everything. I said, no. Limited scope of direct examination.
Absolutely.
And Cicento limited to that. And the reason I think that, and like you said, he created a record because I think, especially as we know, certain people that are familiar with the system, they're going to appeal this issue to death, whether it has good grounds or not. But if the judge would have let the DA just have at it,
right,
because he's all pro prosecution,
right,
that judge is now setting up a bad record.
And I think you make a great point in that. Yeah, I think that's a lot of times people are like, oh, why isn't the judge just letting the prosecution do whatever they want? And the answer is because that's not efficient, right? First of all, Constitution, right? The individual's
overrated.
rights. We all want our rights to be protected. We all want judges who are going to follow the law and follow the Constitution. And also recognizing the long-term effects. You know, just because this judge here allows something doesn't mean that doesn't mean the case isn't going to come back, that it's not going to be appealed, that it's not going to be overturned. It's in everybody's best interest to have judges who follow the Constitution, follow the law, and just, are acting as neutral referees rather than involving themselves.
And also, even as a PD, you would admit vice versa. You get some rabid defense attorneys, whether they're public defenders or private, and the judge lets them go crazy.
Sure.
Same thing. It creates a bad record.
Sure, absolutely.
You want a good record out there that is just and we've all seen them lately, especially after the pandemic, where these appeals are coming back down, and all the Supreme Court's forcing everybody to go to jury trial to catch up on the backlog. Where you got prosecutors and defense attorneys fighting over 10-year-old cases. Witnesses are gone.
Absolutely.
I mean, and we want justice. Especially, you have a new hat now.
Yes.
You're not an advocate. You have a new hat.
Right. Absolutely.
And the justice is very difficult to come for the victims and the family and that kind of stuff when it's 10 years ago.
Absolutely. We want a fair system that works for everybody, right? The defendants, the victims, the defense attorneys, the prosecutors. We want everybody to feel like the system is fair. And the only way you can do that is by being fair yourself. Don't involve yourself. Be neutral. Just, call the balls and strikes like you see them.
And whether you agree with the law or not, it's different, right?
That's not the role of the judge to agree with the law.
Especially at justice court or even district court.
Sure.
I mean, how many times have you had that question on the campaign trail? Or what are you going to do about gun control or abortion or this or that, right?
Yeah, it's not my job to agree with the law. It's my job to enforce the law. Somebody else writes it. That's our separation of powers, right?
Right.
The legislature decides what the law is. The judges just enforce whatever it is the legislature passes. If you don't like the law, you got to take that up with the legislature.
And then also the Nevada Supreme Court then interprets the law. Speaking of checks and balances and the separation of powers.
Yes.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit about the Department 16 and what you're going to do, what you would like to do, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So Department 16 is, because it's a new department, typically speaking, our departments down in Justice Court are either civil or criminal. We don't really have that split docket that you see up in district court where the district court judges do both. Down in Justice Court, you kind of see one or the other. And then the fact that Department 16, like the number 16, is the new department doesn't mean that whatever the new docket is necessarily goes to Department 16, if that makes sense.
It does to me.
It does, right.
I've been through this movie.
Yes. No, you know. So basically the way it works is right now we have 15 departments. I believe 2 are civil and 13 of them are criminal.
That's in 2 domestic violence cases, tracks, 1 DUI.
Correct.
So that's 3, so that means 10.
Regular tracks.
10 are regular tracks.
Right, yes,
okay.
Yes.
Meaning, once again, for the audience, they hear anything from a murder to a misdemeanor petty larceny.
Right, exactly.
2 departments only hear domestic violence cases, and 1 department only hears DUIs.
Correct, yes.
So here comes Miss Nadia on Department 16.
Right.
Low person on the totem pole, right? Well, actually, no, other people, Sybil Dotson will have more experience. If anybody wins the race, because there's Dotson left, who else is left for Justice Court?
Department 6
is
Department 7.
So if Piper beats Bonaventure.
No, that's Department 9.
Okay.
So 6 is an open seat. So whoever comes in is going to be a new judge.
So there'll be other people. So you're not the low person. There'll be a tie.
We'll see. There's a couple. So Department 6 is an open seat that's going to have a new judge no matter what. And
that's right. Is that Max? And
no, that one is.
There's so many departments.
Yes, I believe right now in that department it's Jessica Goody and Bill Gonzalez are running in the general.
Okay.
And then Department 7, Judge Bennett Herron has announced
retired.
that she's retiring.
So that one's Berkeley and...
so Max Berkeley and Amy Wilson are the 2 who are going to the general.
So once again, they'll be low. So you're feeling pretty good here.
So basically, the way it's going to work, they've planned for, rather than having 2 civil departments and 13 criminal departments, they've decided to do 3 civil departments and 13 criminal departments. So they are going to... The new department will be a civil department, but that doesn't necessarily mean I will be doing civil. That's going to be based on, they're going to assign it based on seniority, typically about which judges want.
In the last 11 years, you've also been criminal.
Correct.
But then you tie in, they talk to the judges that are already elected. Hey, does anybody want these civil departments or things like that? So, right?
Yeah, it's just going to be the judges are kind of going to go through and see who wants to go where. And the reality is, I've got only criminal, well, that's not true. I've done some civil cases, but I've majority criminal experience because, as you know, the law is never as clear cut as just a case is a case. There's always other things and they kind of creep into other areas. So I've represented my clients pro bono in civil matters that tied to our criminal cases.
Right.
But I've been overwhelmingly criminal. But sometimes, criminal judges want to go to civil. And certainly for myself, at some point during my judicial tenure, I want to go civil too. I like the idea of learning new things. I like the idea of meeting new attorneys. I think you always want to be growing and learning, particularly as a judge. You don't want to just kind of sit in one place for
And that's
too long.
one reason I left Las Vegas Municipal Court, because it was only misdemeanors.
Right.
I got old after a couple of years. So the same thing.
Yeah.
And at that time, when I was a justice of the peace, we did not have dedicated civil departments.
Right.
So, and once again, just like dealing with misdemeanors, you get your feet wet. You really can't screw up that bad. So that's why it's nice to get your feet wet and learn civil, meet new attorneys. I like your attitude.
I always want to be learning. I think that that's kind of the key to a happy life and to like just kind of always have goals for yourself. I always want to be learning. There's always more to learn. And I love the idea of getting in there and really learning civil. And
so with the addition of the 16th Department being civil, are we going to change up the DV and DUI, or is that not necessarily the judge, but are there going to still be 2 DV departments?
My understanding is we're going to keep it, yes, 2 DV departments, 1 DUI department, and then 10 regular track departments.
So all that stays the same?
I believe so.
Just adding the new department means adding more civil.
Yeah, so 1 more civil department, and then it'll be assigning to the judges. So again, I might end up civil, but I might not. It's just going to be about where everybody ends up getting assigned.
What's interesting to me about, and you may not have enough information yet, but maybe you can answer, is about how much the civils really changed in justice court. Because it used to be, the judges handled them. There was some small claims. Right. I guess we'll call them nowadays hearing masters.
Right.
But now you have 2 dedicated civil departments until
yes.
16 comes along. You have a hearing master for landlord-tenant stuff.
Yes.
There's a landlord-tenant, I'm sorry, I misspoke, hearing master for protective orders, I think.
No, the protective orders are still done by the tracks.
Okay, so they're done by the tracks. Because I've had a few where some are in front of the judges, but I never knew there was a difference. But the small claims, they do mediation now?
Yes, there is a mediation program in Justice Court.
Right.
People don't talk about it a ton, but it is available, and I think it's probably a great resource that I would encourage everybody to look into if you've got a case down in the Justice Court.
So what's the rumors about how much civil if they need 3 departments? Where's it all backed up or stacked up? Or do you not sure?
Well, COVID kind of unfortunately created backlogs everywhere across our justice system.
Like landlord-tenant?
Criminal, civil, landlord-tenant. COVID was really when we were shutting down non-essential business and we were shutting down non-essential court hearings too. A lot of even criminal court hearings. I mean, you remember there was huge changes to the way the criminal side of things was handling things. And so with the civil side, a lot of the non-essential stuff was also, I think, getting slowed down, pushed out. And so we're actually seeing right now in the court system, to my understanding, and I don't mean justice court specifically, I mean the system as a whole, the civil side is actually more backlogged than the criminal side. Because once things started getting up and moving, the in-custody criminal defendants were the priority.
Yep,
and so they were getting moved the fastest because people have been sitting in jail for 2 years. They wanted to get that moving, recognizing how much it affects somebody's life to sit in jail for 2 years. And so the criminal is actually more backlogged, or the civil is actually more backlogged. Right?
Well, and I'm sure because you were on a specialty team, my more serious cases, they were way backlogged. They were getting jammed up.
Yeah.
But on the, I guess you could say medium to small cases,
sure,
we were getting great deals. I mean, because they wanted to move cases to get rid of the backlog. And I also think that some of the great deals are also more just reasonable, because I think the hammer was swinging pretty hard on defendants. And I've always told people growing up here, being a lawyer for a long time, the United States incarcerates more people per capita than any country in the world, and Nevada's always in the top 3. So when we're number 1, that means we incarcerate more people per capita anywhere in the world, and it's not solving the problem.
No, yes, and we definitely, I think, 2020 really saw a shift. I think in a way, a lot of people looked at the criminal justice system, and I think we're starting to see, for 30 plus years, I think there's been this dialogue of tough on crime, and that was kind of the way everybody ran. It was the way judges ran, right? Judges were running as tough on crime.
Nobody ran
judges.
soft on crime.
Right. Well, and it's not, right? The dialogue isn't soft on crime now. I think what it is recognizing that 30 years of tough on crime hasn't worked. It hasn't problem solved, and what we need is problem solving. We need to see what is the root of the crime, and let's get to that, and let's fix the problem. I'm sorry, I have to tap it on the table. What is the root of the crime? And let's get to that, and let's solve that problem so that that person isn't coming back into the justice system. Because the reality is, truly, if you care about public safety, then you want to keep the crime from occurring. The emphasis shouldn't be on how much punishment are we going to give somebody once they've committed the crime. The emphasis should be on how do we keep you from committing more crime? How do we keep you from coming back here? And I think every judge's goal should be to make sure that they're making decisions when they have judicial discretion in a way that's going to maximize making sure people don't come back in front of them.
Well, and that is I agree with that philosophy 100% because, yeah, sure, murders, rapists, pedophiles, that's a whole different ballgame.
No, totally different ballgame.
But that's also a small percentage of the criminal justice system. And as you know, and I know from being in the trenches for 11 years, is majority of the crimes are drug and alcohol related.
Yes.
And a lot of them are stupid things. You know what I mean? But if I'm that business owner and I'm getting ripped off, that's a problem for me.
No,
especially when I'm not a huge corporation.
Yes.
When I'm everyday small business owner, that's a big problem.
Yes.
So we gotta. And that's where this, the extremes drive me crazy.
Yes.
The liberals are just progressive, they're just letting everybody out, and all you gotta do in L.A., Chicago is just run in, steal stuff, and nobody will get you in trouble. Well, that doesn't work either, and vice versa. Somebody stealing bubble gum or $100 worth of stuff doesn't need to go to prison either.
Right.
I mean, I don't necessarily always know the answer, but I have thoughts and suggestions, and we'll make them to the judges and try to get treatment. And that's one thing I did want to talk to you about the public defender's office, because I had a case, unappointed case, when I worked with a public defender who, with the resources, they got him into some drug treatment. I mean, sitting in custody.
Right.
We're in front of a tough judge, and I think that was also fair and reasonable from what he had allegedly done, and the new charges.
Right.
But what was the underlying cause? So why don't you talk to us about maybe what you can bring to the bench as a public defender and the resources you're aware of?
Absolutely. And I think exactly what you're saying is correct. Extremism on either side is always not really going to give us solutions, right? I think that what we all want to see is problem solving. What we all want to see is a safer community. But the conversation, I think, has shifted for the better away from how is punishing people going to make us safer to how is problem solving, how is recognizing what's going on, how is fixing these problems going to make us all safer, which I think is actually the correct conversation to have, and that is what's going to make us all safer. So 11 years as a public defender, and again, I am so blessed that I was at the Clark County Public Defender's Office because we have really an emphasis on providing resources. So each of our teams, and we have teams of about 5 to 7 attorneys, depending on what the team is, but each of our teams has their own social worker. So we have social workers that work in our office. So when we see a client come in and they've got a drug problem and they've got a mental health problem, they've got a homelessness problem, and these underlying issues are leading to them committing crimes. Like you said, property crimes, we can sit here and say, oh, a property crime is no big deal because it was nonviolent, nobody got hurt. Well, no, that property owner suffered, right? And so we want to prevent that property crime from happening, but how are we going to do that? And that's where our social workers come in, and we say, okay, what is the underlying problem that led to this crime occurring, whether it was violent or nonviolent, but particularly our nonviolent crimes? What caused this, and how do we solve it? And our social workers are just fantastic at getting our clients assessed for drug treatment programs, for mental health treatment programs, for assisting them with when they're unhoused, assisting them with finding housing, assisting them with setting them up with resources. A lot of times the thing that you see very frequently as a public defender that was shocking to me when I started was the number of individuals with intellectual disabilities who have they were even maybe diagnosed in school, but then never flagged for resources and weren't set up with resources. I personally, my social workers, I've had probably over a dozen cases where we've set them up with DRC, which is the resource that we have.
And what is DRC?
I want to say it's the Desert Regional Center. Is that what it stands for? Right.
I believe so.
And they are the resource that we have here in town for individuals who have been diagnosed with intellectual disabilities, to provide them with caretakers, to provide them with individuals who will be their payees for their Social Security, to provide them with making sure they have housing, making sure, because realistically, I mean, if an individual is intellectually disabled and can't take care of themselves and they end up out there on their own, what's going to happen? They're going to end up homeless. They're going to end up
how do they
crime.
pay? Basic things. How do you pay your rent?
Basic things. They don't know how. They sometimes don't have that ability to do those things.
And a lot of people get embarrassed because I know and I'm sure you've had this experience where I've handed somebody paperwork and they're looking at it, and you're looking at them going, I don't think this person knows how to read, but they're embarrassed by that, as opposed to the criminal that doesn't care and doesn't want to do anything. And if you can help that person and get them out of the system, because I presume of your dozen or so cases, you've had a lot of success with some of them. And of course, there's some that don't, but the goal is to get them out of the system.
The vast majority, when we hook them up with resources and we get them the help that they need, we're seeing that it's very successful. Because like you said, and you hand them a piece of paper and you're looking and you're like, oh, this person looks like they can't read. And we don't want to be insensitive, but what this person has gone through in their life is a lot of times they've experienced bullying, they've experienced teasing, they've been treated so poorly for what they've gone through their whole lives that by the time they're turning 18 and they're ending up in our adult system, they don't want to talk about it and they don't want to admit to it and they don't want to tell us as their attorneys, hey, this is actually what's going on with me. They're trying to hide it.
And that's just it. They're and I tell my kids, there are good people who make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And those are the people we want to get out of the system.
Absolutely.
I also said as a judge and attorney that it's the bell curve of life. And I don't know, I think we've had this discussion, but there's the A and B students. You get in trouble, you're never going to see them in the system again. You got the D and F students. You can give them every social program in the world, help them out all you want, and they don't care. And once again, those are the smaller majorities. I mean, I'm not majorities, smaller percentages. But the majority are the C students that, dude, don't be 10 minutes late to work every day. How about showing up on time? And they just need a little push. And I think that sounds like something you're focusing on and trying to help on those people that need it.
Right, definitely. I mean, again, as a judge, when it comes to legal analysis and making legal decisions, you've got to follow the law.
Right.
Neutral referee, just calling the balls and strikes. When there's those discretionary decisions of what are we going to do with a person now that they've pled in the justice court, now that they've got a case before me for sentencing, that's when I really think we need to look at, okay, where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you an individual who is causing a lot of harm in our community and constantly causing a lot of harm in our community and don't want the resources that we have available that we want to help you with? Or are you an individual that we feel like resources can really help you and get you back to where we want you as, which is being successful, being productive? And so that's, I think, a really important thing for judges to be looking at and analyzing.
Right.
And the reality is, I mean, I like that bell curve of life analogy because I think that a lot of times when you look at media and the portrayal of individuals committing crime in media, it's that they're all these like sociopaths who want to commit crime, who want to do bad things, who, they enjoy it. They enjoy that life. And you and I have dealt with enough people to know that is not the majority of people.
It's a very small percentage.
The majority of people are people who have gotten into a situation where they can't even tell you how they got there. That's not how they imagined their life being. That's not how they wanted their life being. They've made mistakes and they're going through things. And if we can help them with that and we can get them out of there, then I think that's how we get a safer society. And we increase that public safety, which is, I think, everybody's goal. It's increasing public safety.
I like that attitude. Well, we're going to get ready to wrap up here. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing or anything to pass on to the people of Las Vegas?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you so much to the people of Las Vegas for electing me. I look forward to being your judge for the next 6 years, and I'm going to do everything I can to be a good judge who is fair, who follows the law, who protects your constitutional rights, and who is making decisions to create a safer Las Vegas for all of us.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Nadia, for being here today. And we'd like to thank those of the people watching the Vegas Lawyers podcast. Have a great day.